Welcome back to the One Way Podcast. Today I'm joined by a cast of black belts from Rising Phoenix and beyond. Let's go around the room and introduce ourselves to our audience since they're only going to be hearing our voice. And I want to make sure they can identify a voice with a name. So first up, Mr. Trader, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, sir. My name is Jesse Trader. I am a second degree black belt in one way. I've been training, it's actually just doing the math, and this past January was 7 years, and that is pretty
Wow.
exciting stuff.
Mhm.
So 7 years and no end in sight. I'm going to keep going forever. Some of my favorite things to do in terms of training. I love instructing. I love working with different age groups and sharing the martial arts with people. And personally, I really have enjoyed just the base of striking and grappling, of course, but I'm really interested in recovery and what that looks like going forward. And I want to continue to push into that um, on my own path here. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Mr. Oni?
Hi, my name is Scott Oney. I've been training here at Rising Phoenix for about the same time as Mr. Trader, 7+ years. I started with my son when he was 10 years old. He started before me, and I was sitting there watching him and seeing other, adults and older people out there and wondering why I'm sitting on the sidelines instead of participating with my son. So a few months after he started, I joined and we continued together, and it was awesome. After the COVID year, he quit training as a green belt, and I was faced with a choice: either quit because he's not doing it, or make it my own journey. So I made it
Mm.
my own journey, um, and I'm continuing on. I am 60 plus, so anybody who thinks there's an age limit, I hope to show that that's not necessarily so. And I'm definitely having my physical challenges, and I'm working through them. But yeah, just like Mr. Trader said, just one way for life.
Hmm.
Yes, sir. Mr. McDaniel?
Hi, I'm Michael McDaniel. I've been training at Rising Phoenix Martial Arts for almost 10 years now since it opened. I am a second degree black belt in one way. What really drives me in the martial arts, I like instructing a lot. Because at first I wanted to be a teacher, and uh, I just kind of gave up on that dream after I couldn't get my military benefits, and I was just kind of lost in ways. And then martial arts just opened up a new door for me. I really like doing the striking, the forms, and weapons as well.
Yes, sir. Master Sanok?
Hi, my name is Sonok. I've been training since I was 9. I studied Taekwondo first, and then I met Grandmaster Horse, and then I training like one way, and then I'm also 6 degree in one way at black belt as well. And then I do like kicking and punching because I studied Taekwondo first, and then but these days. Um, I starting to like more grappling and then like hybrid sparring. Like I thought that's not my, it's not. I haven't done that before, so it wasn't something new. But then the more I see and the more I practice, it's like a science. Like in this position, you can do this one, but you can do other one. So yeah, I really like to training that too.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah.
And of course, I'm Grandmaster Rolls, the Dean of One Way. Today, I'd like to broach the topic of trust and the implications of trust both on and off the mat. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship in the martial arts between teacher and student, between training partner, and within the wider community that holds our traditions together. Today, we're bringing together a roundtable of black belts to explore what trust really means on and off the mat. In the world where ego, competition, and noise can easily drown out deeper values of our practice, trust can become more than a virtue. It becomes a compass. It guides
Mm.
how we train, how we teach, how we lead, and how we grow. So join us as we sit down, open up, and speak honestly about the role of trust in shaping character, strengthening community, and defining the martial arts path. So I think with that, let's begin with some maybe anecdotal stories of trust. I think we're kind of faced with trust every single day we step out on those mats because any person could injure us and we could potentially injure anyone else. And
Mm.
so it takes a lot of trust just to go out there and do what we do. And throughout the years, I myself have suffered many injuries, um, but it's never stopped me from having a lot of respect and trust for my training partners. These things are sort of are par for the course and part of the experience. Um, does anyone have a story to share or thought to get our conversation going?
Well, I think I could start with one when you talk about trust in the martial arts, and of course, Grandmaster O's Mr. Trader, you were there last summer when I unfortunately had a heart attack on the mountain,
Mm.
and I became immobile. I couldn't move my feet, legs, anything. But I was never fearful because of who I was surrounded by. The people I was surrounded by, I've been in martial arts, and when you talk about trust, there's no bigger, you know, uh, time to trust than when you're completely vulnerable.
Mm.
And everybody did what they needed, got me the help I needed, and I'm here today because, and I never once I was never worried. I knew everybody would take care of me, and that's trust.
That's
Yeah.
an amazing story, Scott. I think our viewers would find it very inspirational. Would you mind sharing a little bit of that with them?
I like more like because yeah, for those who don't know, I know Mr. Trader and unfortunately Grandmaster Olds was there through the whole thing. Um, yes, I was taken on the mountain for the first time, and I made it, but I was kind of winded, exhausted, and I thought I was just exhausted. And we got back to the Dojang area there, and we were training in the field,
Mm.
and I just felt exhausted. And I thought it was just from the climbing, and I sat down. I was like, I just need a minute. But little did I know when I sat down that I wasn't going to be able to get back up.
Mm.
When somebody came over to check on me and offer a hand to stand up, I realized I couldn't do it. That was it. There was no matter how hard I tried, I had nothing because I was in the process of having a heart attack, which I believe was what affected my limbs because I wasn't getting oxygenated blood to my limbs. So I was in a completely vulnerable state. And like I said, everybody jumped in. Like I said, I was not worried for 1 second. Um, yeah, everybody jumped in and did what they needed. And I could hear everything that was going on, even though I could not do anything. But I
Mm.
knew all the decisions that were being made were the right ones. And like I said, everything worked out fine. And yeah,
I think a lot of Mr. Oni's perspective on this comes down to Mr. Oni's character as a person, though. He is this kind of person who trusts, and that's a great virtue of his. I could also tell the same story and put it in a negative light, but the way that he um, tackled all the challenges that were put in front of him was a true inspiration to everyone on the mountain. And I would say that we were all almost in tears when we saw him come back from the hospital and sit there amongst our group with his uniform on, ready to go, ready to tackle the challenges of the day, even though he had just recovered from a heart attack. I mean, it just blew us away. Now, of
Mm.
course, we didn't let him do anything physical, and we made sure that, he was a part of us in a sort of a spiritual sense and intellectual sense, but not in a physical sense. But the fact that he was just so ready to go showed to me
Mm.
a lot of trust, that he trusted in us to continue to guide his journey up there on the mountain. And whenever people show trust, to me, it's not so much about me, it's really about them and their character. And I think Mr. Oni showed a lot of character up there.
Yes, sir. If I can speak to that as someone who was kind of a witness to that event happening, who, you know, I was out in the field as well, you know, and I saw as we were training across the field, Mr. Oni sitting down, and I thought to myself, oh, you know, Scott's taking a rest. And then he started to look just less and less like he was taking a rest. And, you know, we all called attention to it and said, you know, Mr. Oni, you okay over there? And to see the speed at which my training partners, the other people up on the mountain, you know, Grandmaster Olds, leapt into action, went to Scott, lifted him up, went to get the car, like the whole process of, we're gonna get this man the care that he needs, no matter what. Let's go, 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 go. You know, there are so many moments on the mats where you can ask yourself, what am I doing here? You know, like after training for a few years, you know, you just run into these moments where you go, man, what am I doing here? This is a wild situation. I'm lifting this person's throwing me, you know, like I'm, you know, when is this all going to come into play? And in that moment, when I saw this group of master instructors lift Scott, pull him, take him where he needed to be, I was like, that's what this is about. You know, it is one thing to protect ourselves, but it's quite another thing to make sure that we are in a position to care for other people. And to hear Mr. Oni say that he had no doubt that the people around him would take care of him and would get him where he needed to be, you know, I can only relate to that by saying I agree. I think that's part of what makes that retreat experience so special, but not just on the mountain. I think that's part of what the culture that you, Grandmaster Olds and Master Sunoak, have imparted to us is, you know, martial arts is something that you learn to take care of other people, you know.
Yeah, I think
And
that trust doesn't come naturally. You know, if you grew up in a very untrustful environment as a child, it might be hard to trust. And so that's what I mean when I say that it's a real virtue and it takes some strength and courage to be trusting. Um, it's actually something that is kind of central to my view on trust, because not to take us away from this, but to kind of take us further into the conversation, um, I have a tremendous amount of respect and trust for my masters that taught me. And a lot of people, when I tell them this, they will sort of assume that that's because my master is so amazing and so perfect that there's no chance of him to ever accidentally hurt me. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like when he asked me to put an apple on my head and he's going to do a tornado roundhouse kick, there's a pretty good chance that he could like knock me out right now. Probably not. I mean, it's probably like a 5% chance, but that's still a pretty big chance. You know what I mean? Like there's a chance there, but I'm gonna stand there with my apple on my head because I respect him and I have developed this relationship of trust. And that's can be very hard for people who have been burned in the past, who have started to shut down and push people away and always look in a very judgmental way at every person that's coming into their lives. And probably that 5% is a high. I think Master Quantify has like a 0.001% chance to hit the head. But you know, there's a chance there. There's always a chance.
If I can hop into that regard as well. So one of the first things that I thought in regard to this conversation about trust was being the uke, the yuki, the receiver, right? Being the crash test dummy, as I lovingly call it sometimes, and developing that relationship with your instructor, usually your senior, that says, you know, if they say, put this apple on your head, you say, yes, sir. You say, yes, sir. And I think part of being in that position as the demonstration partner is recognizing, one, how important it is that you are trusting in that role, because if you're fighting the other person and not trusting them and not working with them, the whole thing is going to get flipped on its head. Everybody's going to be confused. You're probably going to get hurt. You might hurt the other person. And
Mm.
I can think of no better way to learn physical empathy than that relationship, the relationship between like the instructor and I think the Yuki, right? The receiver, the person who's on the other end saying, I will take the technique that you would like to demonstrate so that everybody else can see what this thing is. And I feel so fortunate to have been in that position. And I know Mr. McDaniel, you've certainly been in that position, and Master Sonok as well. And I mean, all of us at this point. But it's not easy at the beginning. At the
Not.
beginning,
You
you're
want to
like,
resist, and
oh, you want to
yeah,
resist so much.
Absolutely. Yes.
And over hundreds and thousands of techniques, you start to trust. You have to open up into it and say, okay,
you ride the
there's
wave.
always going to be that percent chance, but now this person has a pretty good track record of not hurting me. And so, okay, all right, we're going to go in. I just wanted to comment that because I think that has really helped me better understand trust in my life, is being able to be a good partner and recognizing that part of partnership is trust.
Yeah, it's a really complicated term because I almost feel like trust is akin to respect.
Mm,
You know, you really, if you don't respect somebody, you won't trust them. And it's through respect that you learn trust. Um, it's almost like the vulnerability you show to people that you respect.
mm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I think one of the things from an outsider's point in the martial arts is they don't really understand what the martial arts really teaches you. It goes so far beyond techniques and kicks. Some of the biggest lessons I think you learn in the martial arts are whether it's, trust or an indomitable spirit or whatever it is. That's the thing. That's the biggest thing I think you get out of training in the martial arts. So yeah, trust is one of those, and yes, and it goes both ways. But you also have to be a trustworthy person too.
Mm.
You have to earn other people's trust too.
Very
I
hard
feel
to
there's,
do.
I feel like there's so many ways we could go here. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about self-control and how self-control ties into trust, integrity. It's trust is kind of a word that's at a connection point between all these
All these
other
things.
virtues, all these other ways that we can behave. And it's also something that evolves over time, which is really interesting. Like I can do the same action over and over again, but that's not going to necessarily change the way somebody trusts me, because trust is relational. Trust is all about relationship. And so I think Grandmaster Rhodes, what you're saying as well is there has to be that component of vulnerability. There has to be that component of like, I'm going to give you something that I might not get back.
Mhm.
And if you give it back, I feel like I can trust you. But if you take my trust and don't give it back, then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not going to give you that again, or maybe I'm going to be careful how much
To,
trust I give you.
to get in the weeds, let me propose this question because I'm kind of wrestling it with myself. Um, I feel like it is trust that leads me to stand. So back when I was training in karate, you know, and some other programs that I trained in, the instructor you would just stand there and the instructor would kick you in the body, kick you in the body, and the more they respected you, the harder they would kick you, or they might
Mm,
punch you in the body. Okay. And for me, it's kind of like trust that I would just stand there and take it. But of course, it's not like I'm trusting him not to hurt me because I actually want him to kick me harder because it will show that he respects me more, you know? So it's a very complicated thing. I think the idea of trust in the martial arts, it's not as straightforward as we think it is. Like,
Mm.
it's not like a trust as in like I trust you to land this airplane, uh, which is kind of the trust that we're usually encountering in life. There's a deeper trust that really manifests in the martial arts where it's like we know how inherently dangerous the martial arts is from the very first moment we step onto the mats. And because we have this sort of loyalty between instructor and student, and because we, as a student, are always striving to prove our passion, our drive, our indomitable spirit, sometimes weird things that might not be seen as trust become trust on the mats. And I think that example of, receiving a kick from your instructor and almost wanting it to be more powerful because you want to be seen as the toughest person in of his students is a weird, I don't know quite how to wrap my mind around it, but I think it is a kind of a weird level of way of showing trust.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
a
I'm
key.
curious.
I feel like it's like, yeah, instead of being kicked, it's like you do a hip throw. It's like, yeah, do it really fast, and I'll do a good break fall, and
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, if you do it really fast, it's like, yeah,
But he like trusts you to do a good break fall. That's why
Yeah.
he feels he can throw you hard.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So that's like it's like this interesting way of showing trust and respect.
Mhm.
And that's why I think trust and respect are kind of intrinsically linked.
Mm. There's a couple other, so this being a black belt round table, there's a couple of other ways I'm thinking of how listeners could get into this conversation. And one thing I was thinking about, Mr. McDaniel, is now I definitely don't want to get too deep, too personal if you're not comfortable with this, but I'm curious if you could share a little bit about how to even ask the question. I'm curious about your experience with trust in the military and what it looks like to be part of that kind of hierarchical system. You have to go through boot camp, you have to get put
Mhm.
into a team of people who maybe you don't fully know, and I'm wondering specifically in what ways you felt there was a lot of trust, and then maybe some other ways that you were like, and here's where trust sometimes fell through. I don't know. I don't want to incriminate anybody, and I
No,
don't want to like, get
that's
anybody in
fine.
trouble, but
Personally, I feel like I'm a very trusting person. I'll
Hmm.
put all of my trust into you, regardless. Just meeting you, I will just say, "Hey, nice to meet you. I trust you," but I'm not gonna say that because that sounds weird, right? But I didn't feel like I was unsafe in any situation while I was in the military. It's like,
Ooh.
yeah, we were doing a lot of dangerous stuff, but like throwing a live grenade. I know that my drill sergeant would know to do in case me being the person, being that guy, throw the pin and drop the grenade. I know they would throw us out and duck and cover, right? Thankfully, that didn't happen. I dropped the pin and threw the grenade. Um, but I really didn't feel like there between drill sergeant and inductee soldier. I didn't feel like there was any mistrust between anything because also coming from a background of Boy Scouts, I knew like
Sure. Yes.
do what you're told. It's that simple. Do what the drill instructor tells you to do, and there will be no problems, pretty much. But from maybe other people, yeah, there was some trust issues because, like, yeah, you don't know these people, you haven't worked with them before, so you're always being thrown into the fire. You're going to be thrown into situations where you have to trust each other, and if that one guy doesn't throw his weight, then it's going to be a soap party, right?
Mm.
Not really. Uh, Full Metal Jacket references. No, that didn't really happen. But yeah, you did feel like, oh yeah, this one guy, he wasn't pulling his weight, but
Mm,
we would have to band together and say, hey, you need to throw your weight or this whole
Mm.
exercise is not going to work. Um,
you know,
and yeah, also just yeah, same thing with going through when you go to your first duty station and when you go to a new duty station, you may not know everybody who you're you're going to the places you're going to, so you have to build that trust up again, and you do
mm,
all these exercises to build that trust and to build that bond with each other.
Yes, sir.
yes, yes. I think the trust in the military must be pretty similar to trust in the martial arts. I mean,
Yes,
there's a
sir.
lot of connective
Absolutely.
tissue there. And, as you were talking, Mr. McDaniel, it was kind of reminding me how trust is something built over time
Mhm.
through successes. But the truth is that at any of those times, there could be a mistake that's made and, trust could be lost.
Mm.
However, that's kind of like looking at the glass half empty versus the glass half full. And I think some people, one of the reasons I want to go back to like what, Scott and the way he was seeing, that situation being his own character as a person is because you can look at it as glass half empty. And then if there's ever an infraction of trust, you could say, that's the reason why I don't trust anyone.
Ah,
You
yes,
can
sir.
you can jump to
Mm.
that conclusion and continue to say kind of turtle shelled up in a defensive posture. And it takes great courage to say, you know what? I'm going to get outside of my shell. I'm going to meet some people. I'm going to mix and mingle, and I'm going to see if I can develop trust with them. And as you do that over and over, and you throw them first softly and then a little bit harder and a little bit harder, you slowly develop a relationship with another person, and that leads to trust. And I think trust really is a relationship. And we don't just abandon relationships because mistakes are made. So
Mm.
as you're
Mm.
developing trust with people, mistakes will happen. And it really comes down to how you are putting yourself together as a character, how you view that infraction of trust. Um, and that can really lead to radically different outcomes on how trustworthy of a person you are.
Something you said, Grandmaster Olds, when you were referencing Grandmaster Quan, was not that you trust him because you have some image of him that he's like infallible, or that like he never does anything wrong, but you trust him because he's human and because he has shown you trust. And I think this image of like you must wait for someone to be perfect for them to earn your trust, or you must wait for them to show you that they're worthy of your trust. Something I think this is kind of like the glass half empty that you're saying, and I have found in my life, like Mr. McDaniel was saying, and I think like Mr. Oni shows, and that I've experienced all of you showing, is that if you lead with trust and you say, yes, I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to trust you to be a human being, which means you're going to make mistakes.
Mm.
You're going to have bad days. You're going to have times where you say something strange, and I go, okay, that was kind of strange, but it doesn't mean that like you're somehow degraded in my eyes, or that
Mm.
there's like, oh, I'm now like better than you because something. No, like, yeah, I trust you to be a person, and if we can trust each other to be people and to be people who are really putting our best foot forward every day, um, this is part of the relationship that I have found on the mats at the Dojang, is especially as somebody who was there 6 days a week, who was there so often, and real like this is what this person is bringing every single day. And there's little things here and there where it's like, oh, maybe that wasn't the best phrasing, or maybe that kick felt like it was a little too hard, or maybe, Okay, I've talked to Grandmaster Olds about this story a couple of times recently because I'm thinking back to it, and this is like I think this is a beautiful example of trust. We were at a tournament now I think a couple of years ago, and I was talking to one of the Grandmasters, the Grandmaster Olds, and just in this casual conversation, suddenly his his two fingers were like in my mouth, and he was talking about like putting your fingers in somebody's mouth and like tearing out their bottom teeth. But instead of just talking about it, he was like, "You go like this," and it's like, and I was like, "Wow, I'm so grateful that I have been prepared for this moment
Yeah.
because because even in the moment I was like, yeah, sure, like fingers in my mouth. I was like, ah, yes, like, and was just able to take that in stride and say, well, that was kind of a quirky thing to do, but that person wasn't doing that to hurt me or to trick me or to. That's just how he communicates. He was
Mhm.
communicating very physically, but
Mhm.
he also didn't hurt me and
Mhm.
was explaining something that he was trying to articulate. And so, as somebody who has been growing to be more comfortable in my body, in that moment, I was like, okay, so somebody's fingers are in my mouth, but I'm safe. Like I'm all right. And anyway, I just feel like
Yeah,
that was
no,
another
that's
good.
a great example because I could totally see a scenario where that was totally misunderstood, and the person would become very defensive and say, "How dare you violate my body without, getting my permission and discussing this, in
Mm,
advance?" And
mm,
he looked so aggressive. But the reason why he was aggressive was because he was trying to demonstrate the proper mindset of the technique where you have to get really aggressive in that moment. He was kind of getting amped up and passionate about it. And I think for veteran martial artists who are very in their
mm,
own skin, they would have no problem with that. They'd be like, yeah, of course, and they just kind of get into the moment. But for somebody who hadn't had developed trust with other people on the mats, might find that encounter very intense and be immediately off-putting. And so that's why I think developing trust is really essential for all martial artists because
mm,
you can only get so far down the path if you don't develop that trust. Like you had a positive experience from that encounter because you had already developed trust on the mats with many other people and had been in those kinds of compromising situations.
mm,
And there's certainly some people that are more on the fringe of our community that are trying to come in that aren't ready for that kind of communication that might easily misunderstand and come to a immediately negative conclusion.
And
mm,
and it kind of brings me back to the point of that's kind of what you learn in the martial arts. It's more than just technique.
Hmm.
You're learning to trust. You're building, and these things like that, like the trust or whatever it is something you take beyond the mats. You take that spirit with you beyond the mats into your life. And like I said, for me, that's the biggest thing of the martial arts is not just learning techniques and stuff. It's learning these bigger lessons like that, and trust is one of them, I think.
Hmm. This is an interesting question. Unless you want to continue on that thought, anyone, I was going to move on to this question here.
sure.
Trust and ego. Ego, how does
Mm,
ego damage trust, and how do you keep ego in check in your own practice? That's interesting.
Yeah. Um, the examples we've already shown, like you said, just like you were saying, somebody could take it, if you let your ego get in the way, then you're not going to be able to trust somebody, just like you did, Mr. Trader.
mm,
Your ego was not in the way, so you were able to, allow that trust. But I can certainly see what Grandmaster Olds is saying, especially for newer students that whatever their background is, there's many reasons in life for
Hmm.
not having the ability to trust, you don't know, somebody's past or upbringing.
Hmm.
And so I think for some people it's harder to build that trust than others.
Well, I think that's one reason why our mission with One Way and with our school here in Texas at Rising Phoenix Martial Arts is
Mm.
about meeting people where they're at and helping them get to where they need to be. And so everyone's going to come in with a different level of trust. And I'm not going to be critical of people for being untrustworthy, but I am going to try to slowly mentor them up to be more trustworthy over time because that's really the strongest position to be in. Once you have that resilience, you'll be able to tackle all the challenges that are ahead of you.
I think in regard to ego and to what you just said, sir, I mean, this from an instructional perspective is very, very important because not only does the student need to trust the instructor for learning to happen, for positive exchange or transmission of teaching to happen, but the instructor needs to trust the student. And I think that's a big part of why things like these leadership life skills that we often talk about need to be brought onto the mats. Um, because if I'm going to give a 9-year-old wrist lock techniques, like I want to make sure that that's the right 9-year-old I'm giving them to. Um, we have been discussing at the youth center this idea of conditional empowerment, giving people the power to change the world around them conditionally. Because I believe that everybody deserves the ability to change things in their lives. But if I'm going to give you tools to change things not only for yourself but for others, I want to make sure that you're not going to use them to hurt others. Like it's it's easy to think like, oh yeah, well, it would be great if everybody knew XYZ, whatever it was, then they could change anything they wanted. But like how many stories and movies have been created around that whole concept of like you give one person too much ability to change things and suddenly it's like a full implosion.
Mhm.
Um,
That's such that's such a
yes,
good
sir.
that's such a good point that you're making there. Like you almost need to learn how to trust to be able to grow as a person. And
Mm,
um I'm kind of reminded of the sort of stereotypical, like overly protective parent who says, I just don't trust my child, so I don't let them do anything. Now, they probably never say that, but that's kind of how their mindset manifests in their child rearing is that they, don't let them go to the park, which is only like a block away because they're worried they're gonna break their leg or get kidnapped and or not have the good sense to cross the road
mm,
and look both ways. And so they never show trust to their child. And then they end up, as a grown adult and they don't know how to trust and they're making all sorts of bad life decisions because they've never had a chance to be trustworthy. And
mm,
so I think when you're raising people, kids, adults, you're always raising people throughout life, even if you're an adult talking to another adult, you're interacting with them in a way to give them a chance to grow as a person. You need to have trust. There's a reason why we have a cash box out there where like cash
mm,
basket out there where people can just help themselves to drinks and pay for them on their own because we want to give people an opportunity to be trustworthy. And do you know that I've seen some kids go in there and just grab a stack of dollar bills and walk out with it. That has happened a few
mm,
times over the last 10 years.
mm.
It's worth it because it's provided an opportunity for people to work on being trustworthy. And so I think that's where like perspective comes in because I could have seen that happen once and I say, I'm done. I'm done trusting. I'm not going to allow this to happen ever again. We're going to put that
Mhm.
behind the
Yeah.
counter. But what's $10 to somebody learn a life lesson about trust? It's not a big deal
Yes,
to
sir.
me.
Yes, sir.
Um, Now, it doesn't mean that you should blindly trust people, and if somebody is reckless and dangerous on the mats, you should allow them to continue to be that way. I mean, obviously, we need to make sure that things are safe, and you need to only trust people that are trustworthy, but it's a relationship that's developed over time, and you need to be willing to be vulnerable to get that conversation going at some level.
I want to touch back on the ego part of that conversation and maybe to go back to the story I told just a moment ago. Like, I think part of what allows me to be trusting is what I alluded to before, which is trusting that people are always going to be people, and there's always going to be that 5% chance that they don't kick the apple off of your head, right? And if you go around focusing on that 5% chance that this person's going to wrong you, then yeah, you're going to have a hard time, making friends, then you're going to have a hard time getting along with people. But if you operate under the idea that, like, you know what, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and I'm also going to forgive you if you
know what
overstep
goes
or
through
something like that.
you know what goes through my mind when I stand there with an apple on my head? I think if he kicks me in the head, he's going to be so proud. He's going to be so apologetic. He's going to be, oh, I'm so sorry. So whatever. But then he'll be so proud because I just stood there and took it like a badass. You know what I mean? And I will have earned like some kind of like loyalty, like, so, like, I've shown my trustworthiness, in that moment. And it becomes even more apparent when accidents happen and you push through.
Mm,
You know
yes,
what I
sir.
mean? It's like you got to look at it as a glass half full as opposed to glass half empty. This is an opportunity for you to show your loyalty and to show your trustworthiness.
So we can put apples on our head when?
Next week, I was
On
gonna
the mountain,
say,
on the mountain. Save for the mountain.
I think part of the ego there, and maybe what I was trying to say with that point is I have to recognize I'm just as fallible as the other person. Like,
Exactly, yeah.
I am absolutely at liberty
Mhm.
to make as many mistakes throughout my life. I try really hard not to. I practice paying attention as often as I can, but of course, we can't all be 100% on perfect all the time. There's going to be something that slips through the cracks. And I feel like we have to be able to forgive ourselves for that. And we have to be able to extend that to others and say, hey, I get it. It's hard. It's hard to be a person out here. So let's pick ourselves back up. I mean, that's the old adage, 7 times down, 8 times up, right? You just keep standing back up. You keep on going. I was wondering, I guess, Mr. Oni, Master Son of Grandmaster Olds, about your experience developing trust with your children. And this could be kind of general. So I don't know if we need specific stories about your children, but like I'm thinking about on the mats when a new 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old comes in, and we've all had the experience of meeting a child and they kind of look at you and they're like, I don't know about you. I don't stay away from me. I don't like you. I don't like when you talk to me. And you have to like slowly kind of get in there and build those bridges of emotional connection. I'm just wondering if the three of you specifically, just because I don't have children, Mr. McDaniel doesn't have children yet, and if you all had any insight into that and what it takes to build trust with a child.
I'd like to start with that one because one of the things I found is like I always wanted trust to be a two-way street. I wanted him to be able to trust me, and I want to be able to trust him. And I think one of the things comes in with the vulnerability. There were times when he was young and he called out something I did, and I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? You're right. So, I had to accept that vulnerability, even though he's younger, I'm the adult, I'm the parent. When he
Oh,
called me out and I know he's right, I have to apologize and say, yes, you're right. And I think that helps build trust.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Good
Mm.
arbitration.
Yeah, I think we should, even though they're children, we should just treat them just like the one human being. So, like if I say I will do this for you, then no matter what, you have to. Because if you don't do it, then it's not trust.
Yes, I agree with that. You have to be, to
Mm.
your word.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah, living up to your word.
Yeah, I mean, I should knock on wood here, but we've never really had a lot of issues with trust with our kids. I've always felt they were very trustworthy. And I don't mean this as like a brag or humble bragger or something, but like, I had to recently look up like when can you leave your kids at home because I want to make sure that I'm not doing something illegal because I feel like I left my kids at home since they were like 3 years old. Like, there's no way my son would have just run out of the house and like run out on the street. Like he understood that that would be dangerous and he would be afraid to go out on the street because he kind of realizes he's just a little kid. And I think that came from trusting him with the important facts of life from a very early age and just
Mm.
sitting him down and saying, here's why you don't go run outside. There's a cars going by, they're going to run you over. And if you're not careful and don't look both ways, you could get really hurt. And you don't know who's out there. Someone could come and like, take you away and blah, blah, blah. And so I mean, we don't sit there and try to traumatize our kids with scary stories, but just being honest and real with your kids,
Mm.
I think can go a long way in building that trust that Mr. Oni's talking about. And then you don't even have to worry about them being untrustworthy because you're talking to them not quite as an equal, but more as a person of respect. And like I said, I think trust and respect are kind of intrinsically linked.
Mm.
I think that's a great point, bring up Grandmaster Olds, because I had that same dilemma. Like, how old is he old enough to leave
Yeah,
alone?
yeah.
I think most parents go through that
Yeah.
nowadays, but it's also when you do, that's showing them that you trust them too.
Hmm.
So, it's important for that in that regard because that helps them, build trustworthiness too. So,
Yeah.
It has been very funny to be working with this group of kids in a non-martial arts context at the youth center. And it is the reason why very quickly I was like, okay, we need a martial arts we need a martial arts program here. We need to get these kids a little more disciplined, a little more respectful. Because some of these kids I'm working with, I'm like, I can't even look away from you for 3 seconds
Yeah.
because it's like I look at them, I look away, I look back, and they've just got like so like I'm like, what did you do? What did you like to go off on a little tangent here? Just yesterday, we were talking about kind of sticky fingers and taking things that aren't ours, and one of the kids, as he's walking out, his little sister goes, "Hey, what's in your pocket?" And he goes, "Nothing." And I was like, "Stop, stop. What's in your pocket?" So it's just my hands, it's just my hand. And lo and behold, he had nabbed something on the way out. And I was like, dude, we just had like a whole group conversation about not taking things that aren't ours. But to make that story less about his action and more about the trust that comes from this, I told him, I said, I told all of you today, I'm going to be calling you out more. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be truthful with you. I'm going to be real with you. And I'm being real with you right now when I say, one, it's not okay to take things that aren't yours. Two, it's not okay to lie about it when somebody calls you out. And three, put it back and I forgive you. Like, we make mistakes. It's okay. But own up to that mistake. Don't be afraid to say, like, all right, you caught me. You caught me red-handed. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to put it back. And I won't do it again. That's kind of where I'm trying to get to with the some of the kids that I'm working with. But there are so many moments every single day where I have the opportunity as an instructor, as a leader, as a mentor to either establish greater trust or break their trust. And I have found, Mr. Oni, Master Son, Grandmaster Rhodes, that honesty is so important. It's so important to just say, I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the facts of life. I'm telling you the facts of life because I care about you and I want to see you succeed. I'm not telling you this because you're in trouble. I'm telling you this because you're part of a bigger story here. And your actions right now have larger implications, right?
You told me a
Um,
funny story once about your brother Charlie, and he was running recklessly ahead of you down the path, and you told him, Charlie, you better slow down because there's a lot of briars up ahead, and you don't want to get tangled up in them. And he said, no, no, no. And he just kept running on forward, and sure enough, he blundered right into all those briars and got all prickered up, and he came back and he was, beside himself with emotion and he said, "Hey, that's why I told you not to go charging ahead into the brambles." And he learned a
mm,
degree of trust that day because
mm,
you told him what would happen and he didn't listen to you and then he did that thing and realized that you were coming from a place of wisdom, not a place of control. And I
mm.
think you have like kind of you have two ways you can view trust. You can view trust as a strength, or you can view trust as a weakness.
Whoa, yes, sir. Mm,
And when I am standing out there with an apple on my head, waiting for my master to kick it off, knowing that there is some chance that he could kick me right in the head and probably knock me out, I show trust as a strength. But when I say, there's like a small percent chance that you're going to kick me in the head, like put a headgear on me, if you're going to do it at all, or pick somebody else, I show that I see trust as a weakness.
mm,
And when you were telling me the story of the kid who is sneaking off with something the moment you turn your back on him, that kid sees trust as a weakness,
yes.
something to be manipulated and leveraged, and probably comes from a life of experiencing that from other people around him. And it's going to be a long process to undo. And it's one of the reasons why I believe so strongly in starting your kids in the martial arts at the
Mm,
right program
mm.
very early on, where they can have an instructor to teach them that trust. And it can be a fundamentally life-changing experience. And it's why I've worked so hard with my kids from very young age to establish that trust so that I never had to worry. Like I remember I'd meet a lot of people and they'd be like, you know, would tell me these stories of how they don't trust their kids. Like I can't even like leave him for 2 seconds before he's like burning the house down. And I would think that's so weird because I mean, my kids have made a few mistakes. My daughter did try to pour paint into my computer once. But I don't think they would like turn on the stove and try to like light the house on fire to get attention. Like they realize how dangerous that is and they would be well behaved even from a very young age, 3, 4, 5 years old. I think it really comes down to showing trust. Like I try to show trust to the people in my life, and I think they feel that and they try to show trust for me.
Mm. It's a good topic. It's very nuanced
It
topic. Like
is, yeah.
there's a lot of different experiences surrounding trust. And as I was saying before we started, that I've been milling over this for the past few days and really thinking like, wow, what does trust mean to me? And
I've been milling on it for about 2 weeks now.
yes, sir.
Mr.
Yes,
McKinney,
sir.
you had a story you wanted to share with us, didn't you, about trust?
I have lots of stories about trust. One about mistrust and one about
Do you want to tell
gaining
us those
trust.
those stories?
Sure, yeah. So first one about mistrust. I was planning on meeting somebody in Canada. First time going out of country. I'm excited. I've shared my itinerary, said, hey, I know you're going to be busy throughout the day, but if you can swing by, we'll meet up, we'll have some fun at this convention and go through our lives. Uh, get to Canada, get to the hotel room, first day, nothing. They don't even make an attempt to drive down and meet me. It's like a 2 hour drive for them and a 3 hour flight for me, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, whatever. I kind of lock myself in my room for about an hour, kind of mull over things, and I try to enjoy the convention throughout
Mhm.
the entire weekend. Yet
Mhm.
never came. And I'm like, hey, what happened? You were supposed to meet me here. And he's like, yeah, I just got busy and I forgot. And I'm like, well, I spent all this money to get here and
Mhm.
to meet you, and you just kind of blew me off.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's kind of bad impression. So I'm like, okay, let's try this again next year. Same thing happens. I didn't learn my lesson the first time, and it was the same thing. I spent money for hotels, spent money plane tickets, convention, everything, and I get blown off
Mhm.
again. So it's like, yeah, I ended up burning bridges with that individual, and and this person kind of had an ego to him. They had main character syndrome.
Mhm.
Like he was the main character of his own story,
Mhm.
and it really damaged the trust
Mhm.
that I was trying to build with
Mm.
him. I was trying to be vulnerable, and I was like, yeah, just don't worry about cost. Just get the gas down here. I even offered, it's like, I will pay you the gas money to get down here. Just get
Mhm.
down here. Let's enjoy the convention. And
Mm.
it was probably, I was being a little too pushy too, so
Mhm.
it's neither here or there.
Mhm.
So, but I did feel like real bad. It's like, man, I was wanting to meet this guy and
Sure.
I never got to.
Mm.
Uh, Now for the other story, same situation, another person. This is why I missed the mountain this last year.
Mhm.
I was contacting a friend that I've gotten commissions from artwork throughout the
Mhm.
years. We became pretty close friends, and he just messaged me one day. He's like, "Hey, do you want to go to Eurofurence with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. That sounds like a lot of fun going across the pond and meeting a new territory, new culture." And I was like, well, if I do it, I don't want to do just 1 week. I want to take like 2 weeks off and
Mm.
spend some time just maybe roaming Europe a bit. It's like, okay, cool. Um, I can room you in my house, and I have another friend that we can stay the night in. And yeah, again, shared itineraries, and I land in Austria, and I told him, "Hey, I've landed. Where are you guys at?" It's like, "We're an hour out," and it's like, "Okay, cool."
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, hour out, he comes, or no, his father gets pulled over by the police because he was accidentally speeding. And he's like,
I'm
"Hey,
so
just
excited to see you.
give us a little while. We have to get cash from an ATM and pay off the cops, and we're right there." And I'm like, I was on a 20-hour flight and didn't sleep an ounce. Not because I didn't want to, it's because I was trying to fight jet lag.
Mhm.
Mm.
So I'm
Mm.
just like really tired, and I'm kind of in and out of this daze. And yeah, he comes up. I'm ready to go. Just like, let's find a spot. I'm gonna throw my stuff in, and we're just gonna take off. And we do it. It goes off without a hitch. And yeah, that first night, he's trying to get me to do stuff, and I'm just like, huh? Because I'm just so tired, and survived the night. Next morning, he shows me his town. We walk around. We go on a hike.
Mm.
It's like
Mm.
I had a blast in Europe thanks to this individual, and it really helped me gain a lot more trust with him. And I was like, hey, man. you ever want to come to America, give me a call. You can stay in my house. We don't have to pay for a hotel. We got a lot of stuff. We got Austin up north, San Antonio down south, and we got a lot of stuff we can do. He's like, okay, cool.
Those are two beautiful stories, and I'm sure one is very painful, but
It
I
was.
think it helps illustrate.
Let me finish.
Yes, sir.
Let me finish real quick. Last week, he gives me a text saying, we're still on for me coming to America, right? You stay in my room. I'm like, yeah, just give me a date. We'll do it. We have it set for next year. Next year he's gonna
Awesome.
come over,
Awesome.
and yeah, I'm really excited for this.
That's so great. That's so great. I mean, it really shows that there are some times where you do have to put up your defenses and cut your losses and move on. But then, by being vulnerable in the first place, you can have these amazing stories and these amazing experiences. And, I'm glad you finished that story because now we see the fruits of your labor going all the way over there and trusting in him. Now it's your turn to, hold that trust.
Yes,
And
sir.
that would have only been possible if one person had kind of put their neck out there a little bit. And
Mm.
it's a sign of a leader to be the first one to do that. And so I'm inspired by your actions. That's great.
I think it's a good point that Mr. McDaniels brings about so you have to have a sense, there's always a vulnerability in trusting.
Mm-hmm.
And just whether it's the apple on the head or
Apple.
traveling to another country,
Yeah.
there's a vulnerability. And just like Grandmaster Rose brought up before, if that trust is betrayed, then what do you do? And
Mm-hmm.
I think Mr. McDaniel's telling both stories, shows that yes, there's sometimes you are going to be betrayed. You will have things, but what do you do from there?
Mhm.
And like Grandmaster Rosa said, sometimes certain people, yeah, you can't let, people take advantage of you and
Mhm.
trusting, but at the same time, don't let it mar your future experiences, just like Mr.
Mm.
said.
Which is also what was so beautiful about that story. Like you had that in your past, but you continued to move forward in such a positive way. And I think a lot of people, like if they stumble at all, they will allow that to mar their perspective in a
Mm-hmm.
way that becomes very damaging for their future progress.
I have a couple of things off of that story, Mr. McDaniel, both of those stories. So I think another big piece of this conversation is expectation.
Mm.
And for both of those experiences, you had an expectation in mind. You wouldn't have booked that flight to Canada had you not had the expectation
Mm-hmm.
that this person was going to meet you. And I think we often live our lives full of expectations. And when those expectations aren't met, we have a decision to make. We can either kind of spurn the world, I don't know if that's the right word, um, and say, like, woe is me,
Mm-hmm.
or we can say, okay, well, that didn't quite go as expected, but hey, at least I got to go to Canada, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that might be my toxic optimism talking, but I think
Indeed, and that's kind of how I see it. It's like, yeah, I got to go to Canada. I didn't explore as much as I would have liked to, but
mm,
I got to go.
Can I jump in here just really quick?
yes, sir.
Because we kind of began this conversation with Scott and his heroic attitude towards having a heart attack on the mountain, and how
Yeah.
I was saying that it really was a testament to his character that he had the trust for all of us, even though I think we did everything right and we really did care a lot about him and we made sure that we got him to the hospital and back. It really comes down to his character in trusting in the first place. And I think the same thing is true with Mr. McDaniel's story
Mm,
going there to
mm,
Canada. Um, it's really not any sweat off his back. It's this guy who has showed his character in the end, and it's very evident from that experience that Mr. McDaniel is the one who is really coming out on top as someone who's truly
mm,
trustworthy.
sir. I think in terms of expectation, when we expect something and it doesn't go quite as we expect, we can either turn to that kind of scorn, or we can maybe laugh it off. But I think what often happens, let me see if I can weave this together. There's a bitterness that arises, right?
Right. There was
If
a
someone, if we have an expectation of someone and they don't meet that expectation, then some of us can fall prey to bitterness. And I've certainly experienced this in my life, and I try my best not to be bitter, but we all go through difficult circumstances, and it's, it's just part of life, is recognizing that, when I think about that person, I get a little bit of that bitter taste in my mouth. But I think also part of this is reciprocity, right? And so we have to lead. I mean, that's the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated, right? And so if you extend yourself to someone and they respond to that with, like a rudeness or something that might cause you to be mistrustful, then I think that's an appropriate time to put up a boundary, right? This is how we protect ourselves. And Mr. McDaniel, you said earlier that you are a very trusting person. And during that first story, you said, I didn't learn my lesson the first time. I had to go a second time before I was able to learn that lesson. And I think the description of burning a bridge can sometimes sound harsh, but that's you putting up a boundary. And you're saying, I'm not going to let this person have a bridge into my heart. Or maybe at the very least, I'm going to stand guard, hey, if you want to come back in here, let's have a little conversation. And I think that setting of boundaries is so important. And I'm going to take a big leap here. Grandmaster Olds, you will know who I'm talking about. Mr. McDaniel, I believe you were there. Maybe Mr. Oni, maybe Master Sunoc. Is it Grandmaster Scott Conway that came and taught the seminar about the legality of self-defense?
Yes, sir.
Ooh, okay, I got that name right. Nice. Well, I was thinking about the story that he shared. I think it was a series of stories. I wasn't even at that seminar, but it was some of the stories that he told were so impactful that they were passed along to me. And he was talking about how you respond to violence and how there's kind of like a way that you have to respond. Like if somebody shoves you, you don't hit them in the head with a baseball bat. It's like that's like way, way over the top. If somebody like accidentally bumps you, you don't just like break their legs. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like that was an extreme response to this situation. And I feel like so often physically we can understand that, but emotionally it gets really difficult for a lot of people. And I would say that there are some really strong parallels there. If somebody betrays your trust, yeah, you're not going to like hurt them. You're not going to like break their legs, but you might say, you know what? I think I'm going to take a little break from this relationship, or, like we're not really seeing eye to eye right now. And I might just need some time to think. It doesn't mean I hate you. It doesn't mean I never want to talk to you again. It doesn't, but I think I need some distance right now, and we're going to go from there. That's, I think about like my emotional blocks, like my emotional shield, and saying, yeah, it's okay to protect my face if somebody's punching me in the face, and it's also okay to protect my heart if somebody's continually striking at it. But again, like this, I know I'm rambling a little bit, so sorry about that, but this is like the depths of what martial arts teaches us, and I think that people really get caught up on what they see on the outside, the punches and the kicks and the uniforms and the culture, but it is so much deeper, and all of this has been made available to me and to us through this beautiful training. through this connection.
If I can jump in there, you were using the example of Grandmaster Conway talking about like proportionality and violence. So if
Yes, 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 sir.
somebody does this, then you should do a little bit more so that everyone sees that you're not having a over like over response to the violence. And so it can kind of slowly raise the temperature. But there's something inside of all of us that knows the way you handle a situation like that is with like extreme violence because you know, like, okay, let's say someone is approaching you and they actually want to get in a fight with you, and they maybe want to see you down on the ground unconscious or hurt or mangled or something, but they're going to start by pushing you in the chest. Then the somewhere deep down inside, you kind of know like you should take that baseball bat and like break out their legs, you know, because then they will
Sure.
desist in their action. Whereas like if let's say you and I were getting into an altercation and you
Mm,
push me in the chest,
mm.
if I push you in the chest, you're gonna sucker punch me in the head and knock me out, right? You're starting it. My response has to be overwhelming to kind of like shut you.
Yes, sir. Yes,
The
sir.
problem is it's not proportional to your response. And so it comes across as kind of like barbarism. And that's something that I try to teach
Mm.
all of my students that like just because you can defend yourself doesn't mean that you're going to have all the tools you need to resolve conflict in life.
Oh, yes, sir.
Because like a lot
Yes.
of parents come in and think like if their kids can defend themselves, they're going to stop getting picked on. But that's not true. You can look like the monster by having a disproportionate response to somebody else's aggression. They could call you four eyes and you could punch them in the head and knock them out, and you could look like the monster in the scenario.
Mm.
And so life is way more subtle than that. And we have to learn how to use our words. We have to learn how to be diplomatic even though that diplomacy may feel unintuitive.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm. If I might add to that, that's the kind of stuff you learn on the mats. Like nowhere else in my life did anybody sit me down and have this conversation with me. Did anybody bring me into that physical experience and then connect all of the dots between the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, like all of it. And I think maybe just to speak for myself, not to speak for all of us, but to have that moment when you're out there on the mats and suddenly that punch becomes so much more, or that form becomes so much more than just a pattern of movements, but you're like, oh my gosh, that Grandmaster Olds, you said to us once, I might be botching this story, so forgive me if my paraphrase is off, but you said something about one of your instructors saying, that punch is you, something like that, and saying like when you throw that punch, you are showing all of yourself. And I can't remember
Mm,
who you attributed that to, but that stuck with me because it was a forms day, and I was like,
mm.
whoa, whoa, yeah. And I'm spiraling a little bit.
Well, trust is like that. So
Yes, yes,
trust is
sir.
an expression of yourself. And that's what I keep trying to come back to, like from the
Mm,
very beginning of this conversation. Like you trusting other people is an expression of who you are as a person, just like that punch is an expression of who you are as a martial artist and what
yes,
that
sir.
form means to you. Um, and how you resolve a situation diplomatically or with extreme violence also tells you a lot about who you are.
Mm.
Uh, mhm. What were you talking about before we started talking about like breaking out people's knees with baseball bats? You were saying something. I'm trying to weave it back into that.
I was talking about that proportional violence. I was talking
Mm.
about setting boundaries and setting boundaries appropriately. um, you know, if somebody slights you and suddenly you like excommunicate them forever, like that might be a little bit disproportionate. Um, I was talking about reciprocity and expectation, how the way we expect things can change the way we respond to them in
Mm.
bitterness or in
Oh,
humor, good
I
humor.
think I know where I was going with it.
Yes,
So,
sir.
uh, proportionality is very important, not just in how you handle violence, but also in how you meter out your trust.
Mm,
And there's this like old Chinese adage, which is like, oh, I can't remember how it goes, but there's this servant who is always faithful to his master for like his entire life, but then he makes one mistake and the
Mhm.
master like feeds him to his dogs or something. And that is how I feel like a lot of people see trust. Like you can be so wonderful to them for many, many years, but if you make one mistake, then oh, trust is done.
mm,
Mm.
And that doesn't make any sense. You got to make a lot of mistakes to amount to all the positive that you did for
Mm.
me to reverse my trust for you. So, like, going back to the tin of cash out there that we have available for people to self-serve their drinks and snacks, it's actually a beautiful story because the kid who took a handful of cash out of the tin ended up returning that cash a few days later,
mm,
and he
mm,
learned a lot about trust. And it was because I gave him the leeway to kind of forge around and find who he is as a person. And if you are hell bent on just cutting people out of your life and pushing people away, you're never going to see people's full potential, and you're never going to be a good
mm,
leader mentoring up the next generation.
I think
mm.
there's I was trying to look up to see if there's like a proverb because it's like you were
There
saying,
is
Grandma
some, yeah.
Stroll. I couldn't quite find it, but you know, like one mistake shouldn't erase 1,000 good deeds.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I'm not exactly sure of the proverb. I couldn't quite find it,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's what happens. You're right. You know, you could have built up trust with the person for so long, but you make one mistake, and now is that trust broken because you made one mistake? And so that defines, I think, both people in that,
Hmm.
so, if you've trusted somebody and they've, always been trustworthy, but then they make a mistake and did something to break your trust.
Hmm.
So then what do you do? Do you continue? You just, like you said, do you
Mm.
accept, hey, they're human, they may, you know,
Yeah, it sounds like a transaction to me and not a relationship.
Mm.
A relationship is built on many interactions over a long period of time that you can draw back upon to make decisions about the future. And I feel like our modern society has gotten to a point where we're very transactional
mhm.
and
Mm.
we view everything from the now and not taking into the full context text
Mm.
of our past.
I,
And
I I know we as human beings we do. Uh, you're always going to be remembered by the one negative thing.
Mm.
Mm.
And instead, you could be a good person, good at everything, but that one negative thing you did will always be remembered by whomever.
Mhm. Well, they say that negativity is easier to remember than positivity,
Yes,
and I
sir.
think that just innately clouds our judgment as humans. But we should try to push against that and try to remember all the positive that people are doing in our lives.
Yes, sir.
I think we've now gone a full hour and a half. We probably should try to wrap things up. Does anyone have
Yes,
any
sir.
closing thoughts for our conversation on trust? I think we've covered actually a lot of ground. It's been a very productive conversation.
The one question that I had written in my notes was, where does trust start? And I think it really starts with the self.
Mm,
I think that's true.
mm. Yes, sir. Yeah, you cannot, like so many virtues, you cannot learn to love others unless you can learn to love yourself. You cannot learn to trust others unless you can trust yourself. I as a closing thought, I would love to do more of this style conversation. I wrote in my notes a few weeks ago, I would love to do one of these kind of conversations around all of the leadership pamphlet cards, like
Mm.
charisma, courage, like creativity, like all, and just kind of
Funny enough,
open it up.
trust is one of them.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Wait, is that this month?
No, sir.
Okay. I couldn't remember for sure.
Thank you for joining us for this Black Belt Roundtable. Conversations like this remind us of what the martial arts are all about. It's a way of living with integrity, humility, and purpose. As you continue your journey, I encourage you to reflect on the role trust plays in your training, your relationships, and your growth.
Mm.
When we build trust, we build stronger dojons, stronger communities, and stronger people. Until next time, stay disciplined, stay humble, and stay true to the one way. If you enjoyed that podcast, please consider liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as hitting the notification bell.